Hey there, my name is Santiago and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new here, I am an incoming MS1 student to medical school. Not sure yet, still trying to figure out where I'm going to end up going, but here on my YouTube channel, I have decided to not only document my path to medicine and that journey and what it feels like, what it looks like on my end, but also to film some videos like this one where I answer questions and just give guidance to other pre-meds out there. So if that sounds of interest to you, please consider liking this video, subscribing, leaving a comment down below. It helps me increase my engagement, but allows you to join me on this journey. All right, let's get into it. So in this video, I'll be answering questions that some of my followers on TikTok left me about medical school, about being pre-med. You guys did end up leaving about 15 questions, I think. So I might not be able to get to all of them, but if that's the case, we'll just make a part 2. And yeah, I'm really excited to answer them. So let me stop talking and let's just get into it. All right, the first question comes from Danny Hernandez. What are your thoughts on taking a gap year? I'm unsure if to apply for this upcoming cycle or wait for the next. I would appreciate any advice. Great question, Danny. I'm actually in the midst of taking a gap year, and I also took a gap year before starting college. I'm a big advocate for taking gap years if the time just isn't right for you. Specifically for me, I did a lot during my undergrad, and I knew that I didn't want to start medical school feeling burnt out and really not ready to do the amount of work that I will have to do as a medical student. So if you're one of those students who is feeling a little bit burnt out and not really ready to start another professional career or another academic journey, I would recommend to take some time off. Another reason that I would consider taking a gap year is if you're not there in terms of your application. If your MCAT score could be a little bit higher, then yeah, I would recommend to take some time off, to study, to retake the MCAT, to build up your score. If your GPA is a little bit low, can you retake classes? Can you build up your GPA? Are you missing more shadowing hours, more clinical hours? Yeah, just look at your application comprehensively, and if there's certain things that you see are major red flags, maybe consider taking that gap year to improve your application. So yeah, not being ready for medical school and not having a great application for whatever type of program you want to get into, those are the two main reasons I would say to take gap years before starting your next academic journey. All right. Next question. Brittany asked, first in Latina and pre-med here, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome? If so, how did you overcome it and manage to stay motivated? This is a great question. I would say that I struggled with imposter syndrome basically every year of my undergrad. I am first gen, just like you. I am also lower income. I used to be undocumented, and those are things that really, they were things that made me feel like an imposter in college. You look around you and you see people who have parents who already went to college or who have a lot of money so they don't have to worry about being a full-time student and paying, for textbooks and for this and that. You can just really get in your head about it and really feel like college isn't for you. And I really felt this the most during my last year of college when I was serving as student body vice president while also completing a thesis and applying to medical school or trying to apply to medical school. I had just finished a presidential campaign. Like, I just had so much things going on, and I didn't feel like someone like me belonged in those things. I kept feeling like, wow, when is someone gonna catch on that I don't belong here? When is someone gonna call me out for being in a place that isn't meant for me? But thankfully, I had a great mentor who kind of shook me and she told me, like, I'm doing the work. I am where I am today because I have completed the things that I needed to do to be where I am then. I wouldn't have been student body vice president if I hadn't done the work. I wouldn't have been accepted to college if I hadn't done the work to get accepted there. I wouldn't be a junior in a pre-medical journey if I hadn't done the work as a freshman and a sophomore to get into those junior level classes. Imposter syndrome is a personal mind game. It's not a testament to what you've already done. It's a mental barrier that we sometimes put there for ourselves. I feel like sometimes we put up these mental blocks so that we don't venture into things that we don't already have some experience in, but that's why we have to overcome imposter syndrome. We have to remind ourselves of everything we've done and to feel valid and correct in our placement. So I guess what I'm trying to say here, Brittany, is if you're doing the work as a pre-med, it doesn't matter that you're first generation, it doesn't matter that you're Latina. There are barriers that come with those things, but you are someone who is already breaking those barriers by choosing to chase a career that really doesn't have a lot of Latinos in it. Try to get over those mental barriers and remind yourself of all the work that you've done to get here today. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the second part to your question, you ask, how did I stay motivated? I just really reminded myself of the reasons I decided to become a pre-med and decided that I wanted to be a doctor. For me, that was having pretty poor health options, not just for me, but for my family growing up. Being undocumented and lower income, we didn't have a lot of choices when it came to providers or to the different health resources that we could get. I remember once Tennessee passed a law that didn't allow undocumented citizens to have like federal insurance like that, Medicaid. I didn't have a way to go to the doctors. The only way I was able to receive care was through this like non-profit health organization in Murfreesboro, the city that I grew up in. There, I guess because the providers really did care for those disenfranchised communities, they were the ones who took in my family and took in me whenever I needed vaccinations or I struggled with migraines, I still do. So they were the ones who would help me get visits and try to figure out what was causing my migraines. And yeah, whenever I felt myself struggling and not as motivated as I wanted to be, I kind of just remembered those things. I want to be a physician who can offer a type of care that the St. Louis Clinic provided me and my family. I want to be a Latino that other Latinos can go receive care from and trust them and believe in them, because I know what you're struggling with, or I hope I do, because not only is it the reality of my family's life, but it's the reality of my life. It's what I've gone through and what I've had to endure. So whatever reason it is that you're trying to be a pre-med, remind yourself of those things whenever you do feel unmotivated, and hopefully you can find some motivation there. All right, next question. How should I get started on research? Should I get volunteering or clinical hours first? These are great questions, and they kind of remind me of stuff that I've already talked about in my pre-medical series. You can find a link to it up here somewhere, or if not, I'll link it down in the description. But yeah, I give advice to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors as to what they should be doing as pre-meds and to get into medical school. So go ahead and check those out as I talk about it more in detail there. But to quickly answer it here, the best way to get involved with research is through your professors. A lot of them do have their jobs because they teach us professors at the university or at your college, but many times your professors actually also have to do research on the side. So what I would recommend is that if there's a professor that you're really vibing with, or a professor who teaches a course that you really are interested in, go up to them, introduce yourselves to them, say that you're interested in what they are doing, and ask if there's a shadowing opportunity in their lab. Doing this shows that you are interested, puts a good foot forward. But yeah, having that shadowing experience will also allow you to really decide if this is the type of research you want to be doing. There are different types of research in college, those that are bench related, meaning you're in the lab working with pipettes, working inside a lab and all the things that labs do. But there's also that other type of research kind of behind the scenes, like maybe it's statistical on a computer, maybe it's running charts or extracting data from this resource or that resource. So, you know, depending on the type of person you are, you might like this research over that research, but really having that shadowing experience will allow you to better decide what's good for you and what's not for you. The last thing you want to do is to do research just to get into medical school and really hate the type of work that you're doing. Not only is it a waste of time for yourself, but the lab also suffers because they have a member who isn't really interested in the work that they're doing. Then the second part of your question is, should I get volunteering or clinical hours first? The order in which you complete either or, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have volunteering hours and as long as you have clinical hours in your application, then you'll be fine. What I would recommend, just to be a standout application, is to do volunteering and clinical hours under things that you really are interested in. So as I talk about my AMCAS application, something that really stood out for me is that I did a lot of work with Latino populations. My research involved HIV, but I was specifically looking at how these two medications were being used within the Latino population. With volunteering, I did a lot of mentoring around the community, but I specifically focused on Latino underserved communities. And then with my clinical hours, I did a lot of interpreting. And again, I focused on interpreting for Latino underserved communities. So the reason I'm stressing this is because my overall application was about me being a medical student, wanting to push Latinx healthcare further, wanting to be a Latino physician who helps underserved, disenfranchised communities, specifically Latino and other minority communities. If this isn't your passion, you really don't have to mimic me. But yeah, that's just what I did. And if there's something that really interests you, whether that be sports health, women's health, mental health, whatever it is, maybe consider doing things that really encompass all of that, so that in your application, the admissions committee gets a pretty clear picture of what it is that you want to do as a medical student and as a physician. Hope that helps. All right, next question. Ashley asks or says, congratulations, thank you. I am a first gen pre-med and my question is, did you do any research or clinical experience that made you stand out in your app? Yeah, as I just talked about in the last question, I did do my HIV research, specifically looking at two medications called pre-exposure prophylaxis and post-exposure prophylaxis. Basically, these medications, if taken properly, can prevent the acquisition of HIV, meaning if I take this pill, I'm not going to get HIV even if I'm exposed to it. Even though those medications are really useful and really do help in preventing acquisition of HIV, we see that in the Latino population, those medications are highly underutilized, while the Latino population continues to be a population that is disproportionately affected by HIV, meaning that though these two medications exist and though they would benefit the Latino population, we don't see them taking it, and as a result of that, or as a consequence of that, the Latino population continues to be highly affected by HIV. So my research really focused on exploring reasons why PrEP and PEP are underutilized in Latino populations. And yeah, I would say that it made me stand out in my application. I got a lot of questions about it during my interviews. I guess that was something that helped me stand out in my application. And then for my clinical experience, as I discussed in my AMCAS application, again, you can find the link to that in my bio, a big part of my clinical experience was working with the Volunteers in Medicine of Southern Nevada. All the providers who worked there basically did it for free. They were volunteer physicians, volunteer providers who volunteered their time to help patients. 72 or 73% of patients there were Latino, were lower income, didn't qualify for insurance. So yeah, it was pretty meaningful for me because those people are me. They were what I was growing up and what my family encompasses. Overall, I chose to work with them because it meant a lot to me personally. And then I added it to my application because I did spend a lot of time there and it really did show me a lot about medicine and what I wanted to do as a physician. I think just overall, my whole picture helped me stand out as a applicant. All right, next question comes from Mohammed. Are minors or double majors important to helping you stand out as an applicant to medical school? That's a good question. I think a lot of times pre-meds consider, oh, I have to take up this major to make me stand out, or I should tackle this minor to make myself stand out. And honestly, I would say avoid doing that. Let's say you're a biology major and you decide to pick up an English major. In doing so, you're hoping to stand out and make yourself look different amongst the applicant pool. It might, but a big question that interviewers are going to ask you is, why this English major? Are you doing it because you're interested in it? Are you doing it because you find it helpful for your journey to medicine? There's going to be a lot of questions regarding it. And unless you're this person who wants to be a novelist or who's really interested in like the history of literature or whatever it is, you know, the reason that you chose to pick up this English major, just as an example, unless you have that, you know, really impassioned reason, it's going to really throw off your admissions interviewer person. They're going to be confused as to why you're deciding to apply to their medical school with this other major. That being said, if you do have a big reason as to why you want another major or a minor, go ahead and do it because you have that reason. Next question comes from Lean. Sorry if that's not your real name. Does having 2 C's in your transcripts matter, or does it not, or does it depend? Thanks and congratulations. Thank you. It actually depends. Let's say you're the average college person. You're there, you have all this freedom, and for the first time in your life, you really feel like an adult. You're taking your classes, you're doing well, or maybe you're not doing as well as you want, but you know, you're going through it. Then all of a sudden you complete your first semester, you look at your transcripts, and oh my God, what's that? You have 2 C's. You panic, you freak out, you think this is the end of your pre-medical career, you can't get into medical school. Calm down. You'll be fine. What medical schools like to see is, if you're one of these students, is an upwards trajectory. So the next semester, you increase your grades and now you mostly have B's, but no C's this time. Next semester, maybe you get mostly A's, a couple of B's, and maybe 1 C again. And then the next semester, you mostly only get A's and B's, and then only A's and only A's and only A's. This is an upwards trajectory, and this is what medical schools like to see if you are someone that had maybe not the best grades in the beginning of their academic career. On the other hand, if you're someone like me who is a mostly A student and you end up your last semester in college with a C, there might be some questions about why that was. If that does happen to you, just make sure you have some reasons as to why your GPA fell, as to why you ended up getting lower grades towards the end of your academic career, because it's definitely going to stand out and there will be some questions about that. But yeah, no biggie if it's towards the beginning of your undergrad. Just make sure you start doing better towards the middle and definitely towards the latter of your undergrad. All right, I'm looking at the time here and I can tell that I've been talking a lot. I knew that was gonna happen. Jesus. So we're just gonna quickly do a lightning round. If you are someone who asked a question here and want a more detailed explanation, I can definitely make a part 2 to this video. But just so I can answer your question in this one, I'm gonna just quickly get through them. All right, question by Alexis. What are some things that you did well during your interviews, and what are some things that you would have wanted to change afterwards? Great question. I actually documented my interview process where I had 3 interviews, I think, back to back. You can find the video up there. But quickly, I was prepared, I dressed well, and I knew some general ideas of how I would want to answer questions whenever a question would pop up. Some things I would have wanted to change, maybe spacing out some of my interviews, having them back to back was not a great thing, and then definitely having some breakfast and some better caffeination. Why MD over DO and PA? I never really considered DO or PA. I just was told about MD and that's just kind of what I did. PA definitely has some great options for people out there, so definitely look into that. Maybe I'll make a video in the future discussing the differences between MD, DO, and PA. Yeah, actually I'll do that, so just look for a video where I discuss those things. Question by a Christian. Born in Bogota, second year in undergrad, low income pre-med, lucky with some big money on the stock market, okay, and was debating on buying a Tesla. Should I? Honestly, if you don't have any undergraduate debt, I would say go ahead and buy it. Just know that when it does come to the application process, it's quite expensive. The MCAT, you're looking at $300. If you don't qualify for the lower income application thing that AMCAS has, then every single application costs around $100 to $200. Typically, you want to apply to 20 schools, so what is that? 20, let's say you're on the lower end, $100. That's already $2,000, and that's not even including having to fly somewhere for an interview, having to get a new suit, having to book hotels, all that stuff. So if you have some money saved up, then cool, buy your Tesla, but just know that if you are pre-med and hoping to apply to medical school, when the time gets there, it is kind of a costly process. Next question. What do you do if you don't get in the first try? You try again if you really want to do this. Go back and better your GPA. Yeah, if you have a lower GPA, that's exactly what you want to do. Take specific courses to prove you can do it. What would you do? Specific courses would be the ones that you didn't do too hot in. If you got a C in organic chemistry, maybe take it again, try to get that A. Really, goal here, if you have a lower GPA, anything below, let's say a 3.5, then you want to be able to retake courses that you didn't do too hot in to increase your GPA. Abigail asked, what do you do after getting your major? How do you apply for medical school? How do you volunteer, or where? After getting your major, you can take a gap year like I've discussed, or you can apply to medical school during your junior year so that when you do go through it your senior year and graduate, you are already starting medical school the following semester. You apply to medical school through an AMCAS system. I discussed this again in my AMCAS video that you can find the link down below. There's basically an application that you have to fill out, goes through this AMCAS hub, and from there different medical schools will get it. How do you volunteer or where? Depends on what your passions are and the different organizations and hospitals that have volunteer positions that they like undergrads to take. So depends on where you live. Next question. Congratulations. Thank you. But how did you stand out in your application? Did you have to take the T's? How did you figure out what you wanted to pursue? I'm not too familiar with what the T's are, but as I've discussed in these previous questions, I stood out by having an application that was very specific to what I want to do in medicine, making it very clear in my personal statement, my application, and my secondaries that this is what I want to do as a physician. And how did I figure out what I wanted to do? As I've discussed, it was just my personal journey, having been affected by not the best health outcomes, not having the best access to health and health providers made me want to be a provider that can offer that type of care to communities out there. All right, next question. Congrats, I'm also a Latino. I want to go into pre-med and I want to stand out and have a head start. Any tips? Also, how did you get the money for school? Great question. I would recommend that you check out my pre-medical series, tips for freshmen and sophomores out there. Definitely look at that video. I give more in detailed responses there. Money, I think I also discussed it there, but really try to find scholarships. Best way to get scholarships from your college or university would be having a high GPA, so really focus on your grades. All right, last question here. Sebi asked, I wanted to know if UNLV is a good school and what other programs you looked into other than med. Sorry, I don't know the terminology. You do. You did a great job asking this question. UNLV was the school I graduated from. Great school. I was in the pre-medical. Well, I was a biology major with a pre-medical concentration. I didn't look into any other programs outside of going into medical school, but if you're kind of worried about not getting into medical school, I would say speak to an advisor, really see if you're on track, if you're looking competitive to apply to medical school, and if that's not really going for you and you still want to be able to work in healthcare, I would say to look into other programs. Nursing, being a PA, being maybe PT or OT. There's really a wide range of things that you could do in healthcare. Okay, cool. That should complete the lightning round and answering most of the questions that you guys asked. I didn't get to go through all of them, but I really don't want this video to be too long because that's not good for either one of us. If you guys want a part 2, I love making these videos. I love answering your questions. So go ahead and let me know down in the comment section. But yeah, thank you for asking the questions that I received and for watching this video, for those of you that got this far. As always, please take care, continue to wear your masks, and once vaccinations become a thing and available to you, please do it. Get your ama y tu papá, make them do it too, tu abuelito si quieren, or si no quieren, make them do it. Let's all get vaccinated so we can be safe and not have to worry about COVID anymore. All right, until next time, take care. Adios.